Cruise news time. Well, 3,000 passengers and crew currently locked down on a cruise ship after a passenger is tested positive for the virus. There's some cruise ports that they don't want cruise ships anymore. And finally, if you volunteered for a test cruise, you might have a free cruise coming your way this week. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Lido, Loca. I'm your host, Tony, here with the latest cruise news updates. Well, yeah, we've talked about it before. The restart of cruising going to be rocky, and today's show will have a lot of examples of that rocky return to cruising. First, let's go to Singapore and talk about the Genting World Dream cruise ship. Genting has been doing cruises to nowhere in Singapore for many months now, serviced many passengers without incident, but there is a little bit of a spike going on right now in Singapore, very minimal compared to, like, if you look at the United States, but they've had some clusters pop up in places where people congregate, like karaoke bars. And now someone who has had close contact with someone who's tested positive on land has shown up on a cruise ship, and now they have tested positive. Now, they didn't test positive when they got on the cruise. They had to take a test before they could cruise. They had a negative test, but somewhere toward the end of the cruise, this individual tested positive for the virus, and of course that kicked in all of the protocols. They returned to Singapore early after it was determined that there was a positive case on board. Both guests and crew members were quarantined to their cabins, and the only people allowed to roam the ship, the skeleton crew of crew members that are doing the contactless food delivery, and then the essential workers needed to get the cruise ship back to Singapore. The next part of the process is Genting will complete contact tracing. They'll make sure that they test everybody that needs to be tested before they allow passengers to disembark. I don't anticipate that this will take a huge amount of time. I mean, I don't think we'll be counting the days that the crew and the passengers are quarantined on this cruise ship. We do have an example of something similar happening earlier this year. Quantum of the Seas, Royal Caribbean's Quantum of the Seas had a passenger with a positive test on it. The passengers were locked down for 16 hours. As they went through a process, they eventually determined that that was a false positive. But yeah, it resolved within a day. I would hope that's what's going to happen here. Just to note, the person that did test positive has been removed from the cruise ship, taken for medical care. We'll continue to watch it. This is the first big example of Genting having this kind of lockdown scenario there in Singapore. I don't believe there's a vaccine requirement or anything on these cruise ships. There's a lot of protocols, masking, that kind of thing, social distancing. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. There was a cruise scheduled for Wednesday today from Singapore for this cruise ship. That has been canceled. It will be interesting to see when the next cruise resumes. Now, I do have 3 stories of cruise port cities that are pushing back against cruise ships, 2 in the long term, 1 in the short term. Before I get there, let me quickly invite you to subscribe. If you like staying up to date with everything that's going on in cruising, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. That way you don't miss out on any of these episodes. It doesn't cost anything, and it helps us with YouTube. So please, if you could, please subscribe. Thank you in advance. All right, let's talk about a few cities that no longer want cruise ships in their city. A couple for the long term, 1 for the short term. Breaking news coming out of Italy yesterday. The Italian government has declared the lagoon there in Venice a national monument, and they will no longer allow cruise ships into that lagoon. Now, there has been a compromise in the works for this for a while, proposing a new cruise port to be built outside the city where large cruise ships could visit, but passengers could still make their way into Venice. But the pressure has continued to mount. People looking at that plan saying it's going to take too long. And finally, the Italian government yesterday says, look, no more large cruise ships coming into the lagoon there in Venice. There was also another interesting component at play. UNESCO is the United Nations heritage body. This is a certification that's given to certain places. You'll see it advertised in cruise literature. Go to these UNESCO sites. Venice is one of them, but there has been some conversation lately whether or not Venice would continue to be a UNESCO site. And so some speculate that part of this move is to keep Venice in good standing as a UNESCO site. So with all of that considered, a new compromise was struck where they would use the industrial canal going to the port city of Marghera. It does have its own challenges, though. It does share the same ecosystem as the lagoon there in Venice, and they've got to dig that channel out deeper to allow the cruise ships to happen. So straight up compromise, a lot of give and take there, but the end result, no big cruise ships in the lagoon there in Venice. Now, another city that's been talking about removing cruise ships for the long term is Key West, Florida. How about that? We thought everything had settled in Key West, Florida. Well, the commissioners there in Key West went back to work last night trying to work inside the law that was put in place by Florida earlier this year that has overturned the vote there in Key West to ban cruise ships. It's an interesting dance with the law here. So the commissioners, this is what they're doing. They are writing ordinances which will come up in August for a vote. They'll be the ones that vote on it. And if these ordinances pass, then that will be kind of the law of the land in Key West. How does that clash or not clash with the law that was put in place by the state of Florida, basically overturning the cruise ban in Key West? Well, that law says that there won't be any voter initiatives to limit what's going on with the cruise lines or commerce from the port there in Key West. And so this won't be voted on by the people. The commissioners are taking their cue from the people that voted to limit cruise ships there, and now they will be making ordinances that basically mimic those restrictions that were voted on, but this won't be voted on by the people. So the ordinances will be put in place by the city, and they will be managed by the city, and this will limit whether or not people that run the pier, privately run the pier, can accept cruise ships, and it will effectively put the cruise ban back in place in Key West. And the way that this will be addressed would be by lawsuit from the pier owners. So a lot going on there, but there still is a move afoot to keep cruise ships out of Key West. All right, we've got one more cruise port to talk about. Let's talk about Tortola in the British Virgin Islands. Recently, Tortola seen an uptick in COVID cases. Sadly, they've seen an uptick in fatalities. They just had someone pass away from COVID yesterday. And in response to that uptick, they've decided to not allow the Celebrity Summit to dock in Tortola this week. Like, it's certainly not surprising. I think we'll see a lot of this as the cruise restart happens, as different places where cruise ships are now returning to, as they're dealing with outbreaks in their area. It will alter the itineraries of cruise ships. If you're cruising right now, flexibility is the word of the day. Cruising is going to continue to restart, but it's going to be, it's going to be a little bit of a rocky path. And so keep that in mind. If you're booking right now, don't go into it thinking it's going to be the same cruising that you always know. Be prepared, be flexible. And this is another story that just reinforces that idea. Now, finally, let's talk about this. Did you sign up to be a Royal Test Cruiser all those months ago when it came out? Well, they're finally looking at the list. 250,000 people plus have signed up to be test cruisers for a free Royal cruise. This is the week they will be picking volunteers for their next round of test cruises. Those cruises include the Allure of the Seas from Port Canaveral, happening in January the 27th. Symphony of the Seas will be going out of Miami on August the 1st. Independence of the Seas also going out on August the 1st from Galveston. Mariner of the Seas, August the 11th from Port Canaveral. Oasis of the Seas going Cape Liberty. How about that? On my birthday, August the 22nd. And there will be test sailings on the Odyssey of the Seas and the Ovation of the Seas. Those dates have not been announced yet. So if you signed up for a test sailing on Royal, pay close attention to your email this week. You may be getting the invite. Boom, that's your cruise news. Question for the comments is this. First, did you sign up for Royal? Which one of those cruises would you hope to get picked for? And secondly, how are you feeling about the cruise restart? Does the rockiness dissuade you, or are you well prepared? Leave a comment below. Thanks so much for checking out the show today. Please hit the like button, or on your next cruise, I'm going to make your checked luggage come in late enough for where you just start freaking out and go, did they lose my luggage? And then it will show up, but still, you'll have that moment of terror. This is Tony with Lido, Loca, and until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.